special guest is Jenni Davis, the first recipient of the breast cancer vaccine, which is now in phase 1 clinical trials at the Cleveland Clinic. I first met Jen last week at AACR, where the breast cancer vaccine results were presented for the first time. And so now please join me in a very, very heartfelt welcome, my special guest, Jen Davis. Very emotional day, Monday. The first results that have been presented formally for the breast cancer vaccine. I want to really make this about you because this is your story, and we'll talk about the history of the vaccine later. But the most important thing is that you now are here and able to talk about what it was like for you to, first of all, be offered this opportunity, and second of all, how you feel about it. So first of all, how did you even hear about the breast cancer vaccine?
My team at Cleveland Clinic. I wanted to be in a trial. I was in just a study that basically kind of tracked triple negative. It was very didn't really have any end results. They were just kind of monitoring triple negative. So I joined that trial as soon as I was diagnosed. And then I tried to get in the trial for Keytruda, which is now part of standard of care for triple negative. And it was a 1-to-1. And so they felt that I was going to get into that. And I didn't. And I was so upset that I didn't get in. But now looking back, like everything happens for a reason. I had heard that, there was this vaccine. And so I asked at every appointment, and they kept saying, well, it's not in the human phase yet. So, we'll let you know when it does. And it was the end of September, my nurse practitioner, Annie, she said, this is a go. We're doing this. And she said, but here's the kicker for you. One of the criteria to get into the trial was you had to be less than 3 years out from your first treatment.
Right.
And my first chemotherapy treatment was October 15th. So I literally had just 2 weeks. And so they scrambled to get all the testing done. Well, of course, at the main branch in Cleveland, they were all booked and couldn't get some of the testing done. So I was traveling all over the place to get these tests done.
You should have came to my house in West Palm. I could have driven you to this. Of
I
course, I couldn't know you that back then. We'll talk about that later.
yeah.
So you had 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
sorry, continue. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. So got all the testing done, everything came back okay, and I received the first dose of the vaccine on October 19th.
Wow.
So
And
I know.
that was 2021, right? October
Yes.
19th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, let's rewind a little bit because, as you know, since we've met, I've been involved with this project since 2010 and met so many women, including myself, that have gotten those horrible, or heard those horrible words, breast cancer. And what was it like, rewind a little bit, that moment when you found out that you had breast cancer? You said you were a mom, and, we all just, I remember thinking that lightning just struck me like and kind of broke my world into two parts, before breast cancer and after breast cancer. It just seemed to me like it was the most devastating thing I'd ever heard in my life. So what was
Yeah,
that like for you?
very similar. When I had felt a lump and had a mammogram, it came back and as alert, and this was in February of 2018. They did do an ultrasound and they did a biopsy, and my biopsy came back negative. So I just thought, okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
it was growing, and then I had 2 lumps. And so I kept going back, and it was a local establishment close to my home. So I went back several times. And at the end of July, they did another ultrasound. They did not repeat the biopsy, but they did another ultrasound. And said, we can see that it's growing, but on the ultrasound, it looks the same as it did previously, and we already biopsied it, so it's negative. So see you in a year, they told me. And I knew something was not right.
Mhm.
So I went for a second opinion. And they actually, this was at another local establishment. And so they did an ultrasound, and I went by myself because even though I thought something was wrong, I still thought, well, the biopsy was negative. So I didn't think that it was cancer. So I went by myself to this appointment, and they did the ultrasound, and the girl doing it, she said, just give me 1 second. So she leaves the room,
Mhm.
comes back with like four people, and they said, this is definitely cancer. And I was like, and being a nurse, I said, first of all, you can't tell me that without laboratory confirmation. And I'm here by myself. So they did a biopsy, and I remember driving home and calling my husband, and I said, they think that it's cancer. And he said, no, it's not. You had a biopsy. It's not.
Mhm.
So I was like, and I was just conflicted at that time, because I was like, why would you tell me that? And then my biopsy was negative. So it was about a week later, took about a week, and I was at work, and I got a phone call, and they just kind of blurted it out. Like it was the strangest experience, because why you would ever call somebody and deliver that news instead of having me come in, I don't know. So it was that moment that I said, okay, I'm going to Cleveland Clinic, which is about 2 hours from my house.
Okay.
Um, but it didn't matter. I will drive for every appointment. It
Mhm.
it didn't matter to me. So made an appointment for Cleveland, and that was around the 1st of October. And on my initial visit, it was exhausting. I was there for probably 12 hours.
Mhm.
They repeated every test. They did additional tests. Then they saw something on my right breast. So they had to biopsy that. That came back negative. They biopsied my lymph node. I mean, just, it was a lot. They did
You weren't alone then, I hope.
no, gosh, I was never
Yeah.
alone for another appointment
Yeah.
after that,
Okay.
ever. And then on that day, they had set me up to get my port placed, and I had my first dose of chemo on October 15th. So yeah, it was a whirlwind. And
But you know what, Jen? This is a sad part of a lot of stories, including my own. I was not diagnosed at my local hospital either. And but all that time that you lost there. And the thing that when I counsel women that are newly diagnosed, it's often so hard to convince them to go get a second opinion. And they're like, well, I can't hurt my doctor's feelings. What'll my doctor? Well, your doctor, number one, is not God. And
right,
number two, don't you want for your own sake to make sure that when you look back on this, that you really left no stone unturned? And also, women's intuition, as you said, is an incredible thing. And you know when something is not right.
right,
And I think as women, we're sort of pleasers and we just think of ourselves last. And going back, when you hear like my situation, well, you're fine, it's negative. You're like, oh, whew, I dodged another bullet, another year.
right,
Like for you, thank goodness you said, well, this isn't, something's not right here. This lump is growing. And so then, so then obviously what happened with your treatment? So you had to have chemo before you
Mhm.
had any surgery.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
I had to. So I had the 4 rounds of adriamycin. Why they nickname it what they nickname it is beyond me.
The red
Um,
devil, red devil.
yeah, I
You didn't
mean,
know? Because it's red.
I know, but still, it's horrible. It's horrible. So went through that. The first couple of dose or the first couple treatments, I was good. I was okay. I was like, okay, I can do this. And then it was my third dose in December that kind of just wiped me out for the whole month. I lost like 7 pounds over one weekend. I was very ill. My hemoglobin, it was the week of Christmas. And so I was having a hard time breathing. I could not breathe. And I was just like, what is happening here? So I called up to Cleveland and they said, you get to a local hospital now. So went to the local hospital. My hemoglobin was 7. Um, and then they also did an MRI. And again, I don't know what was going on with my local hospitals, but they did one, and he came in my room and he said, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but I think that the treatment that you're taking is not effective. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, well, we see spots on your spine. And I said, okay, what does that mean? And he said, well, basically, there's no cure for bone cancer. I mean, this is a couple days before Christmas. My husband was with me. It was on a Sunday. So, I mean, I was just hysterical. I told my husband, I said, we're not telling the kids, we're not telling my mom, we're just not telling anybody because Christmas is in a couple days.
Mm-hmm.
And so the next morning, before I could even call them, Dr. Montero, who was my oncologist, called me from Cleveland. He said, come up here right now. So I did, and still hysterical. And so he's like, you know what? I'm just going to repeat everything that they did. So he did, and he comes back in. He's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. He's like, you do not have bone cancer, Jenny. He said, not even enough to make anyone here suspicious. Like, not sure what he saw,
Mm-hmm.
but there's nothing. So I just told you that though, because of the roller coaster that we all go on. So then it went from like hysterical and so upset, and I thought I was dying, um, to like, okay, I'm going to be okay. This is good. Um, he
Yeah.
did not decide to give me a transfusion because he said that once you start those, then a lot of times they have to be repeated. So he just said, let's let your body see if, it's going to take care of itself. Thankfully, it did. So my chemotherapy did stop for a couple weeks because we had to let everything heal and get back to normal. And then I was to have 12 rounds of Taxol.
Okay.
I only made it through 7. At one of my appointments, Dr. Montero, they always ask if you have any neuropathy, anything like that. And it was getting to the point where I couldn't button my shirt. I couldn't like twist off a pop lid. I couldn't use the can opener. And so I told him, I said, yeah, I'm having some of this. And he was like, well, we need to look at stopping chemotherapy. So again, on this roller coaster, I'm hysterical because I'm like, I can't stop something that is treating me. Like it's still there, you know? And he looked right at me and I'll never forget it. He said, Jenny, he said, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help you. He said, if you
Wow.
continue, yeah, he said, if you continue with this, you could be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. He said, you have to be honest. And I said, well, I want one more because I was so devastated that I was going to have to quit treatment. I thought this is what's going to save my life. But then what
Mhm.
kind of quality of life would I had if I kept going? So he said, okay, we'll do one more. And so then before my next one, I kept it scheduled and I went in. He's like, how is it? And I said, well, it's the same, but maybe a little worse. And he said, okay. He said, we're done. And I was just like, I don't think that's a good idea. He said, well, it is a good idea and it's okay. He said, so we're just going to schedule surgery. So on March 7th, then that's when I had my double mastectomy, and my surgeon was Dr. Al Hilly, and she was amazing.
Though, Jen, I'm involved with some things with the FDA, and
one of the difficult things when you are in a clinical trial, I know weren't in that trial yet, but you're getting treatment, is getting patients to really be honest about the side effects, so what we call the harms. Because I would feel like you felt, and a lot of women feel like you felt, well, no, I need this drug. I don't care. I'll push through this. This is so important to save my life. But we don't often really concentrate enough on the collateral damage that's going on, in our bodies. And thank goodness, Dr. Montero sounds like a man ahead of his time, because we are pushing and pushing to get not only the harms that are expected, like the neuropathy, but people get other harms that they never report because it's not on the list, and therefore we don't know enough about those other harms. I know when you're in the marathon to save your life, then it's like, bring it on.
Yeah.
I can do it. Wow. Yeah. So you have the double mastectomy, and I know that's no picnic, having done that myself.
Yeah.
And so what happened after that?
So it was, I walked in with a small army.
I
The
love
clinic was like, whoa. I mean, it was my husband, my three kids, my mom, my dad, my mother-in-law. I mean, we had a lot of people. And so they said it could be about 8 hours, from the time we take her back at the most. Well, it was 12. And so they were, which I didn't know, but when I woke up, I just remember looking at the clock and it was 8 o'clock at night. And I was like, what happened? And my mom said, no, everything's okay. It just took a little longer. Because when, of course, they took the sentinel lymph node, and then they only took 3 after that. And they saw no lymph node involvement, thankfully.
Wonderful.
Yeah. But that was a long process too. And it amazes me how, you're only there for 24 hours and then you get sent home. So it was an experience, just getting through all of that. My surgeon was wonderful. She really was. And I just kept saying, did they get it all? Are you sure? Did you get clear margins? Are you positive? Like, I didn't believe it. And they kept saying, we did, Jenny, we did. And I'm like, how do you know? And they're like, well, that's why it took so long, because we kept sending tissue to the lab and it would come back, and we made sure that we got it all. So after I healed from that, that's when I started radiation. So I had 26 rounds of the radiation. So basically the whole month of June, I did that. And I handled that pretty well, to be honest. I had, obviously some burns underneath my arm and things like that, a little bit on my chest. But other than that, it was not, well, nowhere near, the other treatment and things like that. So I was able to handle that okay. Then following that, I had reconstruction, which failed miserably. Yeah, on the left side. So they kept trying. It just wouldn't heal. It kept breaking wide open. And my husband, because it was after all of this, so we had a vacation planned. And the morning we got up to go on vacation, like, I got a shower and I got out and I dried off and I looked down and my left side was just completely open. The wound. Yeah, it opened wide open. So again on the roller coaster, devastated. I'm like, what do we do? So, ran up to Cleveland Clinic as fast as we could. And they said, well, we gotta get that out. We got to get that expander out, that implant. So they took it out and they said, well, that can never be put back. And I was like, okay. I could elect to have the surgery the flap surgery where they take it from, your stomach or your back. But at that point, I was done. I had enough. So yeah. So on my left side, is completely, there's no implant, nothing there. And that was hard to see, because I had no idea, because when I came out of surgery, they had the implants or the expanders in. I mean, it was definitely different,
Okay.
but it's definitely different to see that. And I think that's something that is forgotten about a little bit with cancer patients is, okay, great, you made it through everything. You're technically cancer free. And then it's everything afterwards, even years afterwards. It's like, are you sure you don't want to follow up with me on that? It's kind of like, okay.
I'm actually trying to create a movement on that. I call it post-traumatic breast cancer stress syndrome, because even, thank goodness I'm 14 years out. And there is still times when I go into like a dark place, and I don't want to go to the dark place. But back to you. So I know those expanders in themselves are no picnic.
Yeah.
And they don't really, I don't think, prepare women enough for that.
No.
Because when I had read about healing from mastectomies, people were like, oh, it was fine. It was, okay. And the other thing I don't want to forget to talk about is your body image. Like, I remember going into the bathroom. I did not get treated at my local hospital. I went to Dana-Farber, which was 2 hours away, similar to your story. And they saved my life because my invasive cancer didn't get diagnosed at the first place. But the point was, I remember going into the bathroom and taking a shower and looking at myself in the mirror. And I almost said, wow, like, when I wake up, they're going to be gone. And I don't know how I'm going to feel about that. In my book, I talk about the song, It's My Party and I'll Cry If I Want to. My mastectomy party was in the bathroom crying, saying, wow, this is real. Like, this is happening. And then you also have this feeling that, wow, my body betrayed me. What's going on with that? And you sort of start just rethinking all these thoughts that I don't think there's enough emphasis or support given to women once treatment is over.
Mhm.
And again, I had a team, like my mother was like, meeting your mom the other day. I was talking to my mom on the phone about it. I said, oh my gosh, mom, reminded me so much of you, because it was really hard for her. And your medical team, all of a sudden they're gone, sort of,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And then your friends and family are awesome, but they've been through hell and back with you.
Right.
And everybody's like, oh, you're fine now. You're fine now. Get it out of your head. You're fine now. But that's why survivor groups are so important. And getting into advocacy was the biggest blessing ever happened to me. But this is not about me. But, I just think that women I think we beat ourselves up too much. And it's okay to say, I'm not okay. I look okay, but I'm not okay. So, and then let's go back up to the day you got the vaccine, which, my gosh, we dreamed of that day for 10 years. And the biggest regret that I have was that, because of conflict of interest, Dr. Touhy so wanted to be there to hold your hand.
Oh.
And anyway, and of course, he's recently no longer with us. And so that day must have been mixed feelings for you in a way, or was it just like a sense of relief, or how did that feel?
It was absolutely a sense of relief. I mean, that's the number one question I get all the time. Oh, I can't believe you did that. I can't believe you were the first person. Like, why would you? And it was really not even a thing for me. I had I asked two questions, and that was it. I asked, in the lab, did they see an anaphylactic reaction? And they said no. And I asked, over the two decades, how many had a recurrence? And they said zero. So how could I not say yes? Because I woke up every day with a headache or anything that I had. I was certain that it was cancer and I was dying. I mean, I went to the point where I would be like, writing letters and planning, the end of the world here. No. So for me, it was the biggest blessing. And I can't believe how it all happened. And I'm so thankful. And I I wanted it. I didn't think twice about it.
Mm.
You know, people would say, well, what about the long-term effects? And I said, well, what about it? Do you know what the long-term effect for me is going to be if this cancer comes back? It, so I was thrilled to get it. I mean, I was so happy. My husband went with me for the first dose, and my mom went with me for the second and third.
Wow.
Um, and the only thing that I had and still have are just tiny lumps at the injection site. That is it. Had no other side effects at all. Nothing. So you just never see that in research. You never, I mean, turn on your TV and listen to a medication that runs down everything from death to every every disease possible that you could get from taking a pill. And then we have something like this that has little to no side effects. It, yeah, it blows my mind. And I'm just,
Yeah, the interesting thing, though, is that it took somebody to think outside the box. Dr. Touhy was an immunologist. He was not an oncologist. And that was part of the early struggle to get this vaccine off the shelf. And change the world's mind that primary prevention is possible for cancer. That's in the last 5 years, just since the vaccine moved into preparing for human trials, the whole paradigm of cancer has shifted to monoclonal antibodies and targeted treatment. And before it was, let's just throw all these toxic drugs at people and
yeah.
hope for the best. Your courage can't be underestimated here, because that took a lot of courage to do that. And the mice, I always wanted to meet the mice too, but that was illegal as well. When I went to Cleveland, I said, I want to see these mice, And Dr. Chu was like, no, it's, animal protection. We can't show you the mice. These mice have the closest biological, physical body to women. They're bred to do that. And they're bred to be prone to breast cancer. And so that's when they do go through, the only thing they saw in the mouse model, as I know was also what they called injection site inflammation. Thank goodness we know a little bit more now about vaccines since COVID, because we all have experienced some sort of injection site reaction with the COVID vaccine, and we all got over it. And you're changing the whole approach. And triple negative breast cancer has always been the biggest puzzle. With no adjuvant therapy, there's no tamoxifen or Femara, or I just applaud you so much, because without you, pardon me, without your courage, this wouldn't be going.
well, like I said, I'm so thankful for Dr. Tuohy, and I'm thankful to have met you and hear everything that you did. And that's what we were talking about the other night. I mean, the fact that you never gave up, I told you, like, I owe you my life.
Well, excuse me, I'm sorry. Not me, sweetie. I mean, I feel like Dr. Touhy saved my life, to be honest. And I told him that so many times, because he gave me something bigger than myself to focus on. And it was a no-brainer. As soon as I met him, I just said, listen, this is a blessing for me if I can get involved in this. And my one wish going forward, message that we can get out there, is I can't let his legacy disappear. A lot of things are happening now, which are amazing. Finally, we're getting publicity thanks to you being willing to speak out. Gosh, we just couldn't get that to happen. And I don't know why. And I just want to preserve his legacy, because he, as you saw in that video that I sent you to watch, then the last video I recorded with him said, I'm getting older, but I'll keep going. You girls keep supporting me, and I'll keep going. And And now that he's not here, I feel an obligation more than ever. Whatever we can do together to preserve that legacy, which is so deserved. My passion now is this vaccine has got to go forward. It's got to go to phase 2. The 1B trial we are recruiting.
Yes.
For that's the true prevention arm, which that's going to take a really long time to prove. But if we can prevent the recurrence of triple negative breast cancer, and so now you're just about 5 years from initial diagnosis.
Yep, 4.5, September.
Right, which is a really great place to be. I just, whatever we have to do to continue this, we got to keep going. And I'm just so blessed to meet you and to know you. And I just want to thank you for all you are doing. And if there's anything that I can do to help, I'm here for you. And I'll keep going as long as I can keep going, in Dr. Tuohy's words. So what's it been like for you since AARC? You've been doing a lot of interviews, which are all amazing.
So a lot of interviews, and they just keep coming. So that's why I want to talk to you today, because Time Magazine is calling me at noon. So I definitely want to share Dr. Tuohy's story inside of it. And like I told you before, I was not told and given information because, they said it was research. So I did not know so much of the story. And I wish I would have, but I wasn't allowed to know anything.
It wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to be.
Right. But I know now I will absolutely do whatever you need. I will make sure that every person that I talk to knows who developed this.
You and I joked the other night, but did you have a chance yet to watch Living Proof, the Herceptin story?
I haven't.
Yeah. Well, just the joke being that you and I told you this the other night. I actually contacted Lifetime TV and said to Dr. Tuohy, goes, we got to get a movie made of this. Okay. This is like your story. Dr. Slayman's story is your story. And he says, so who do you want to play you? He goes, well, Brad Pitt, of course. So if you can get that story done and get Brad Pitt to play, I'm just joking, but we used to joke about that all the time. He was not at all about publicity and about him. And I remember one time he got invited to get some award and he goes, Judy, they made me feel like LeBron James, and he said, it was so awesome. I think if you can help spread the vaccine story, I think that'll help this a lot to go forward. So anyway, Jen, amazing. I'm sure this is not the last. It's the first, but not the last conversation we'll be doing together. And I just wish you many blessings and good health. And I just thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well, I appreciate you so much. And thank you.